Our next guest is Ms. Janet Wee. Ms. Wee is a Senior Customer Engineering Manager at Microsoft for Data and Artificial Intelligence. She leads a team of deep technical experts and trusted advisors in the areas of data science and research and development, who supports enterprises in developing unique value from their investments through adoption, consumption, governance, and training. Ms. Wee has deep hands-on experience in artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and cloud technologies. Outside of work, she's passionate about driving awareness and thought leadership for youth and women in tech, and is an active data science evangelist, educator, and mentor. Today, her sharing will cover how AI is disrupting or helping the financial market, and how youths can enter into the AI space. Ms. Wee, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm really excited to be here today talking to you. And well, hopefully it'll be an exciting one. And feel free to send in your questions later, right? So maybe just before I proceed to the presentation, just want to give a brief background about myself. So I'm currently with Microsoft, customer engineering for data and AI, right? Covering the APAC region. So, you know, maybe not long ago, I was in this same position as you are. We're in, you're figuring out what you want to do, right? In terms of courses, in terms of the career path that you are trying to pursue, right? Like what technology, what industry, right? And my background is is engineering, industrial and systems engineering. I was contemplating between doing business at the same time, some technical stuff, computer science, and even engineering. But I followed my passion. I love math. I love playing around, going deep into technology. So I ended up in engineering, and I started as a generalist, basically, in terms of industries. But FinTech, financial services, financial industries, close to heart. But I thought, I go wide. And that's how my career started. Actually, it was in different industries, going to different places globally, handling FinTech, manufacturing. But I guess the lesson in there, if I have to summarize, like why I'm sharing this with you, because in this presentation, I hope the main takeaway really is, as you select, right, your career path, whether AI for FinTech is the right for you or it's something else, I think number one is to make sure that you really love what you're doing, that passion is there, right? Like whatever you select, you just don't follow the bandwagon, but it's really something you love doing. Right? And secondly is resilience. We've been talking about, I think the past speakers have been talking about disruptions, right? So you have to be able to handle whatever change, and technology can be disruptive, as I will be covering later on. So yeah, passion, resilience, and disruption, okay? So now we are ready to go into our presentation to talk about artificial intelligence, right? So artificial intelligence is becoming ubiquitous. Basically, it's everywhere, with the technology being able to sense, to feel, just behave like humans, right? And if you look around you without probably being too conscious about it, right? So AI is infused in our day-to-day lives, from your smartwatches, right? From outside when you maybe autonomous vehicles, right? Smart home, even when accessing your applications on your phone, right? Like the facial recognition, the biometrics, all these are actually having AI infused in them. And maybe a few years before, we see that, we have a long way to go in terms of artificial intelligence. But given the evolution, how fast technology has evolved, both from the hardware and from the software side, right? We are seeing more and more that technology is now able to amplify the so-called human ingenuity, right? When you talk about reasoning, right? So even with less data right now, artificial intelligence is able to really reason with you. And sometimes you're surprised that the machine is more intelligent than us, or it can do more stuff than us, right? And you're talking about, like testing your phone, opening it up, and if you have a twin brother or twin sister, try opening your phone using your twin brother's or sister's face, and it won't open, right? Like, why? Because there's actually AI running behind it, like to reason whether to give you access or not. Understanding, right? And it's the same thing, right? When we talk about being able to process text, images, videos, or everything around us. AI has become very good in doing this. And interactions, right? I'm sure at some point in time you have interacted with a chatbot, right? Digital assistants is what they call it. And used to be, it's very tough. It's just like you have the AI behind reasoning with you and trying to understand. But interaction, it's still very much manual. But today, even the interaction is considered AI run. Like when to push a notification to you, when to push a recommendation to your applications. All these are being run by AI. And next slide, please. Yeah. So, and when you talk about FinTech, right, and it's good that financial industry, financial services, the whole industry is a great beneficiary of, or I would say, like, can benefit a lot from artificial intelligence. In terms of use cases, you can think of it as these 3 pillars. Number 1 is around customer experience. When you talk about identity protection, so how do you know, like when you apply for maybe credit cards, when you use your transactions, when you transact online, right? Be it in stocks, be it in payments or whatever. How come the system knows whether it's you or not? So there's like AI behind it, right? I mentioned earlier about digital assistants being able to interact and ask the bot to transact for you. Then you have like the next best offer, right? How sometimes you search for one thing, maybe you Google something, right? And then you search for a product, and then suddenly you have Facebook pushing ads to you. How did they know that you're into something, right? So there's actually AI running behind it. And it's not just that. It's not just all about customer facing in FinTech. Even within financial services, banks, right? The application of AI is not just for the customers, but also in improving productivity within these companies. So, if your interest, for instance, your interest is more around human resources, right? Or maybe trainings, right? Or improving operations. There's no stopping you from actually applying or making use or leveraging AI in these companies, right? So basically, for instance, making sure in terms of the application process, getting applications from the customers, like loans, credit cards. AI can do a lot in terms of improving the process behind it. And on the 3rd pillar, right, like the AI-powered insights, there's so much things that you could do beyond, customer and operations. You can talk about, how do you improve customer churn, credit scoring, when do you know, like, when can you approve a card or not, giving all the data points that you have or that the bank has. How does, the back end know that you're eligible for X amount of loan. So all these, right, are real applications of AI, and FinTech, as I mentioned, is one of those industries that could really benefit from artificial intelligence. So now I think the question is, yeah, that's great, right? Like you have a list of use cases in here, great application. So what now? As a student, what do I do, right? If I want to start a career in FinTech, leveraging AI, where should I get started? Should I dive right into algorithms building? Should I go straight into coding? Oh, I have a business background, or I have a different background other than computer science. So where do I start, right? Okay, next slide, please. So, let's go back to the fundamentals. And bank leaders, know and they all agree that data and AI, these are, it's just like married couples, right? You need to have these two together in order to become successful, and that is the key, right? So I see many, like those that I speak to, students, they say, okay, what coding language should I study? Like, what types of algorithms should I build? What do I do? Like, it's very technical. But the first question is, do you have data? And the answer is, oh yeah, I forgot. Like, how do I collect the data? And maybe a few years ago, especially if you're working on statistics and all, like they would say, oh, we run surveys, right? Like we do data collection, we get data points, and then we analyze. But today, it's just given all the IoT around us, data collection gets easier and easier. And without us knowing it, the phone is collecting data from us. Actually, with all the systems around us, they know us more than we know ourselves sometimes. They know what time we wake up. They know where we go. They know where our next destination is without, maybe our mom doesn't know, right? Like where we're going. So it's really like data is everywhere. And for AI to be really intelligent and for applications to become really useful, like data is key. So what does it mean for us? What's the implication for us? If you want to get started, here is a journey, right? Next slide, please. Yeah. So as you can see, and you can click for the next one. Can you click? Yeah. OK. So just like in medicine, right? So doctors, right? So do you specialize in surgery? Do you specialize in the eyes? Or what do you do, right? Similar to data and AI, it's like a blood. Think of it like blood flowing through your systems. Without blood, there's really nothing you can do. And we've talked about the various pillars like engaging with the customers, operational excellence, employee productivity, and so on. As you can see from this diagram, right, you have data flowing in for you to make more intelligent decisions about this, right? So it's like the human body, for artificial intelligence to act like humans, for us to be able to decide on these different aspects of our day-to-day life, right? And in FinTech, similarly, whether it's operations with its customer or new product development, you really need to have that data flowing through. And that's when you decide, okay, with data flowing in, what do I do with the data? How do I process it, right? And then we are talking, right? So data and intelligence are bundled together. Next slide, please. Yeah, so how do we get ready for AI? So we've talked about two things, right? We've talked about data on the left side and then going all the way to action. So there is like a journey between that, the space between data and action. And I assure you, right, even with my journey working in this space for very long, there's really no shortcut. You have to understand and know the fundamentals. I cannot just jump right into action without understanding what are the basics that you have to take into account. For instance, data, right? As I mentioned, you're gathering massive amount of data, whether it's text, whether it's images, and in bank, there's a lot of financial data that's flowing through the system. How do you analyze it? And not to mention, you have different users, right? So you have the IT team who could be looking more into the systems. You could have the business side that is looking more on the customer experience. Then you could also have people in the marketing looking at sales, right? And maybe in the investment sector, you have people looking at maybe how the stock market goes. Is it up? Is it down? So what do you do? How do you make decisions around those? And there are I would say two steps to it, right? At the very basic, and even for us in Microsoft, right, we see our customers in various or in different journeys in their business today. Some are more mature. That means they are pretty much have a hold of what data they have and how do they process it, while others are more kind of, I would say, still in that digitalization phase, trying to convert manual data collection into digital process. So you see it from the top, right? Business intelligence. You can build dashboards, right? Interactive dashboards around it. And you can see, basically, you can generate insights as to what happened, okay? What did that, and you can get insights as to, what's likely to happen in terms of predictions, right? But then you have that piece of, manual process of trying to clean the data, trying to generate insights, trying to drill down into the data, and then visualizing it for the users to use. And then for advanced analytics, the next question is, once you are done with that business intelligence aspect, then you have the advanced analytics. Then you start blending in machine learning, deep learning, as what we call it. That means more sophisticated algorithms to handle sophisticated insights or more complex insights, right? It's about being able to answer the question, okay, so what should I do next? Or what kind of prescriptions do we do, right? And that kind of, that accelerates that journey from data all the way to action, where you have the automation process. So think about the autonomous vehicles. How do you think like these cars are able to drive safely and basically on autopilot, right? Deciding when to stop, when to move. So all these are basically data fed into the system and trying to crunch massive amount of driver experience and making sure these are all incorporated into the decision. So it's all about that decision making. So next click, please. Sorry, go back. Yeah, okay. So now the question is, okay, as a career path, right? So given that this is the journey for you, or this is the journey that organizations are in terms of their maturity around AI, as a student, as someone who is exploring that career path, where should you get started? Remember when I started the talk, I said, where is your heart? Where's your passion? What do you like to do? Are you more into, touching the data, trying to understand more how you collect data? Is it through images? Maybe if you're into photography, a little bit of art, right? You want to analyze pictures. You're dealing with videos and images every day. Maybe that's where your passion is, and you could start with data engineering around that side. Are you more into consumers of data? That means, well, the data is prepared for me. I don't want to go into that data collection, data processing, data transformation phase, but I want to do data storytelling, as what they call it. I want to generate insights. I want to, like a CSI kind of going into and like, oh, okay, I see a trend, I see a pattern, I want to do this. You are more into looking at trends and patterns. Maybe you're into data analyst role, right? And on the other hand, algorithms, coding, right? Building the best algorithms out there. And who knows, right? Like maybe one of you will have the breakthrough and kind of become that leader in that space, like developing these algorithms that are embedded into the technology. Or maybe your interest is to have a little bit of everything or to become an all-around, and that's data science role. That means you need to have an understanding of the data engineering. You need to be able to interpret data, but at the same time, you need to be able to tweak, not necessarily build, but you need to be able to tweak algorithms such that you get the outcomes that you desire. So in terms of career path, right, this is where you could, in a way, explore as to where you want to go. Okay? Next slide, please. So the next question is, okay, is that all? Well, I've talked about technological path, right? Like roles. Where do you wanna go? But you would say, okay, but I am more into marketing. I'm more into business. I'm more into strategy. You know what? My interest is more around social good. So how do I tie it up with data, right? So in financial institutions and companies, there are also many different departments, and IT is just one. You have business development, you have new product development, and maybe you have CSR, right? Corporate social responsibility, which could be your passion, which could be your interest. So how do I infuse AI in FinTech into these various areas? Okay, next slide, please. Yeah. So when we think about AI and as you explore, and it's good, like when you do your career explorations, when you talk to the companies, to also ask them what are they doing in these various circles. We've talked about strategy, business strategy. For AI in FinTech, we know, right, the 3 pillars. Like you could apply artificial intelligence into customer experience. You can apply AI into employee productivity and all at the same time actionable insights. So that's all about the strategy. But the next question is, okay, the next area is culture, right? For us to be successful, it's not just enough to know where you will apply AI, but you need to have the data-driven culture. So we've talked about that in a way that without data, there's no AI. And thirdly, and this is a big thing, and I hope everyone listening to this would, in a way, reflect around AI being responsible, right? So we've heard about discussions around privacy, right? Security, like who can use data for what purpose. So we are talking about safety, reliability, accountability in terms of the use of data. And in FinTech, this is really big because we have talked about credit scoring, credit profiling earlier. And just as humans, sometimes we have biases in terms of building the algorithms. They say that when we build algorithms, we tend to reflect the human bias around it. But being responsible in AI means we are trying to level out the field and become more responsible, right? So there are issues or discussions around how do you make the models less biased. That means does your model, credit scoring model, have equal treatment of male and female, right? In terms of educational background, right? Do we have enough data points to actually make sure that the models are behaving as what we are expected, because probably the data points we have are mostly from males, right, to begin with. So, that is a job by itself of kind of going deep into AI and making sure that we have ethics in place, like we're doing it correctly. We are more in the positive outcome rather than, just using AI to harm others, right? And the fourth circle here is scaling AI. You've noticed that I have not spoken a lot about technology, and that is because technology itself is embedded in that whole circle. AI is not just technology as a standalone circle, right? Having understood the strategy, the culture, and the responsibility, now you get to ask, okay, so what kind of technology should I adopt, right? So should I build it myself? Should I just use the technology out there, consume it, and be a user of it? Or should I just consume the output of it? And in our term, in our Microsoft term, we call it like the infrastructure, the platform, and the software as a service, right? The IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. And that's what it really means. Because regardless of where you are in terms of maturity in your journey, you have these tools. These are just means for you to reach the end, but they are not like the whole world, right? So again, it all starts with what you want to do, the culture that you want to drive, the responsibility, and lastly, the most important part is AI for everyone, and that is the ultimate goal. It's not just for IT, it's not just for ComSci, it's not just for people in the technology field, but we want AI to be, as I mentioned earlier, ubiquitous everywhere, that is for the benefit of all. And I think for everyone listening to this, you have a role to play in that aspect because you don't shy away just because you are in a non-tech field. But given all the opportunities that I have just laid out in this presentation, regardless of the background that you have, you could be a builder or a user or a consumer of AI and the outcomes from it. And it's not just FinTech as an industry, but it spans in all the other sectors and industries as well, and even inside FinTech companies, right? There are so many things that you could touch upon or you could contribute, okay? So what do you expect when you get into organization, right? So I was just having a discussion earlier when it comes to, interviews, right? Like, for instance, okay, titles sometimes can be deceiving. So it's good to ask these organizations that you're joining, right? Given an idea of, data engineers, data analysts, data scientists, or AI engineer, right? Having an understanding of what these are. It's good to ask questions around, those circles, around strategy, culture, responsibility, and so on, and the technology that they are using. And that's because, next slide, please. Yeah, in organizations, this is what we call the AI maturity. While you have like a nice landscape on, what AI can do, all the benefits that it could bring, you'll be surprised, right? Like different companies are at different stages of maturity, and it's good to know what questions to ask when you are doing the interviews, when you're finding the right career path for you, because sometimes you get in there and says, this is what I want to do, and then you go in there and say, oh, okay, it's not what I expected, and that kind of creates a lot of disappointments, right? So know what questions to ask. Like, for instance, is the company that you're joining, or is it foundational? Are they in a way already in the exploration stage in terms of maturity? In terms of culture, are they ready? In terms of the ethical shift, that means, like, in a financial institution, for instance, understanding like whatever product or technology that they build, it has to be ethical, right? In terms of data collection, the last thing we want is that we use an app that is collecting personal data and using it for some other purpose. And that's for customers like us, that's a major no-no. So does the company have enough like ethical guidance around it to actually make sure that AI is being put into good use? And then at the same time, ownership, right, used to be all these stuff about coding, algorithms, data engineering, data business, data analysts, and so on. Pretty much it belongs to the IT, right? But now it has changed. It pretty much everywhere. It's possible that each business unit would have their own data science team trying to do and understand what that function is doing. And it's all about collaboration. So sometimes it's like, skills like the soft skills like project management, stakeholder management. You'll be surprised that these are actually critical elements of succeeding in this AI space, right? Communication skills, being able to extract insights and communicate the insights, okay? So where do you go from here? So I get a lot of questions in terms of, okay, so it's a broad space. In terms of learning materials, do I need to get a course? Do I need to enroll like a full program? What kind of resources do you have? And from the Microsoft perspective, I think I can share a few with you. Right? Next slide, please. Yeah. So internally, well, and you can, I'm not sure if the slides will be shared and the links are clickable, but you could just use the title to search for it. We have like a massive amount of resources talking about the products and services around AI, right? So there is like talk about the AI platform that we have, the intelligent applications like autonomous systems. So you can really see the wide range of products that are already out there, right? So all the cool stuff. Our approach, Microsoft is very specific in pushing for responsible AI, and we think that this is really an important area for us, and everyone listening to this presentation has a role to play in making sure that AI is put into good use, not just in FinTech, but everywhere. And the services that we have, and at the same time, AI for good. This is actually something very close to my heart, AI for good, right? Because I feel that, again, going back to what I've shared earlier, like all these will be nothing if whatever you're doing or whatever you are developing doesn't contribute to a wider audience, to the wider, I would say, citizens or wherever you are, right? So this is something that you might want to have a look: AI for health, AI for earth, AI for humanitarian action. So there's a lot of cool things in there, very interesting stuff that you could align with, right? And there's like learning paths in there, free learning paths that you could also explore, right? And depending on where you are in your studies today, like your familiarity, your background, whether it's business, whether it's computer science, whether it's in finance, engineering, wherever you are, right? So there are learning paths specifically designed for you, and that is because, again, it depends on your interests and it depends on, the skills that you want to build or that you currently have. And there are labs, and actually aside from the data, right, one of the important aspects in succeeding in AI is that it's not just about reading about it, but really you have to play with the applications and understand how it works, right? What outputs it churn out, what it generates. So so all these I think you can access. There's like tons of resources around that. So definitely, it's a good list that you could explore. Okay, next one. Yeah, that's my last slide, just in time for our Q&A. Okay, first question. Should we as youth be concerned that AI will steal jobs? Okay, yeah, a very common question. Many people ask this one, right? Like I would say no. And going back to the first slide that I presented, right? It's meant to augment, right? Like the human ingenuity. That means it's for us to, like AI, it's here to help us focus more on the value creating activities that humans can do. While those, the monotonous ones, like those repeated tasks that can be automated, that could be done by artificial intelligence. While for us, humans, it's really leveraging the AI and making sure that we are doing the more valuable stuff, and we have more time kind of framing and generating value out of this technology. Okay. Well, next question. What is your opinion on misuse of AI like deepfake? Yeah, so again, right, each one of you here in this presentation, this call, have to be responsible in how AI can be used. And similar to hacking, right, we have something called ethical hacking, and that is because good and bad, there's always like two sides of the coin, right? So the goods, things that you could do to help humankind, as society, whereas there's always like that percentage of people that will make it, channel it into something that could harm others. And we don't want to be part of that group. So that's why, for us, while it is possible that AI could be leveraged for the bad stuff, right? It is our responsibility to advocate and to make sure that, whatever we develop, like the companies that we join, we have to make sure that we are working towards responsible AI, right? So the accountability, being responsible, the ethics around it. Okay. Where can we enhance our AI skills? Where should we start from, right? So it's a journey, right? And as I showed in that chart earlier, it's really, to be good in AI, it's really that journey from data into action, right? Start from where you are today. Start, being more conscious about how data is collected, about how you handle data. And the next question is, based on your interest, what do you want to do with the data, right? What kind of actions do you want to generate? Similar to, I like to use the analogy on cooking, right? So you want to prepare a dish, all right? Like you have ingredients and everything is in front of you. Where do you get started? Like, you just throw everything in and then, okay, finish with the dish, right? But that's not the point. It's really understanding, okay, what kind of presentation do I want to achieve out of this? And based on that, do I pay more attention to the temperature? Do I pay more attention to the spices? How do I bring all these together. It's actually an art. So start off with basically trying to understand where you can gather data, where you can collect. Do you want to do more of the data analysis or more the insighting? Are you more into building the algorithms or more into coding? Depending on your interest, right? So that's where you kind of start your journey, and don't be afraid to fail. You start your journey, you feel that it's not the right thing for you, go back, reset, try to unlearn what you've learned. That's what we call it, right? It's a cycle. And don't be afraid to get penalized. Like, for instance, we're talking about disruptions. And the whole thing around it is being able to throw away what you have learned and then restart and do it again, as long as you're clear and sure what your passion is and what you want to achieve at the end of the day, right? So I think that's the key message. With data being important foundation, how do we know that data collected isn't infringing privacy? Good question. Again, goes back to the responsible AI, right? It could be, the data engineering team making sure that how the data collection is is built. Like, once you have the data in your hand, how do you process it? Like, in terms of security, in terms of privacy, how do you build the infrastructure such that there is no data leak, right? And how do you make sure that in terms of analyzing data, that it's not easy for people to just play with the data, send it across the internet, and then you don't know where it goes. So there needs to be, in a way for the team, for you to maybe look at the logs, look at access, making sure that you have different, as what we call it, access rights to different layers of data, right? And that's, in a way, a responsibility of the data engineers working with the data analysts and AI engineers and the data science to design that architecture and platform of how do you make sure that you get the right data and they're all complying with the right privacy level. Okay, I think the last question is, if I'm not mistaken, what is the difference between AI and machine learning? Right, so if you think about it, right, AI could be the whole encompassing, it's the umbrella, as I mentioned earlier, right? Think of it as being able to function like humans. That means you are able to see, you are able to smell, taste, right? To hear, you're able to feel, you're able to interact. So all those components make up artificial intelligence. Whereas machine learning, it means basically having algorithms in these machines working to achieve certain outcomes. For instance, natural language processing. It's basically working with text, or you say image recognition. It's working with images, right? So machine learning algorithms work with specific objectives. But when you combine all these, right, natural language processing, image recognition, video recognition, to build an application like a robot, an autonomous vehicle, then that's where you achieve AI, right? So it's like Lego pieces. Machine learning could be the modules and the pieces that you work with. And when you bring all these together, you build an outcome similar to how humans behave, then that's artificial intelligence. Yeah? Okay, I think I have covered all.
Thank you, Ms. Wee. We would now like to invite Ms. Tan to present a token of appreciation for Ms. Wee. Ms. Tan, please. Ms. Wee sharing with us has helped us learn about AI's widespread applications and capabilities in our daily lives, and how AI can be brought about new capabilities such as automation, streamlining, and optimizing financial and banking processes. AI skills will be critical for the future careers, and from this sharing we've learned how one can equip themselves with AI knowledge to prepare for a future in the FinTech industry.